Hello again. Chris Lee, Graham Doty of Southeastern 16 here to talk some SEC baseball. Got a couple Monday games in the books with maybe some implications there. We've got Alfred Ezman is going to hop in here momentarily. We're going to talk about what he saw in Arlington at the Shriners Children's College Classic. He got to see 3 games of Texas, 3 games of Ole Miss. I'm interested to get his thoughts on what he saw. But, Graham, let's start with Arkansas. Arkansas played the 4th game yesterday of the series against Washington State. I think run-ruled the Cougars. But I think the big story, we wanted to see Landon Beidelschies, the Ohio State lefty who just transferred in, who was a big part of what they're doing. And, in fact, I think if Landon Beidelschies was on, and I may have botched the pronunciation, but if he were on any other staff in the country, he might be in the weekend rotation. He's on the Arkansas staff. And, boy, they've got some dudes. We'll talk about them in just a minute.
Yeah.
But Landon Beidelschies yesterday goes, I think, 5 1/3, strikes out 7, gives up 1 run, and that Arkansas pitching staff. And look, it is Washington State, and I'm assuming they were playing in freezing cold weather, a lot like they're doing in Nashville today. But that is a great sign for Arkansas. Not a surprising one at all, but just sort of underscores our thoughts on Dave Van Horn's pitching depth coming into the year.
Yeah, for sure. We were touching yesterday just that we feel Arkansas top 3 in the SEC as far as pitching staffs, and they certainly showed that in this 4-game series against Washington State. I got their game notes open right here. Phonetically, they wrote his name out, Beidelschies. So I don't like. You think it's
Beidelschies?
Yeah, Beidelschies. Either way, he was lights out in his Arkansas debut in the cold yesterday.
Yeah, thank you to Arkansas. Not enough schools do that, and so I just forget to check, assuming it's not there. But anyway, he was really good yesterday. Another big lefty that they get was a 2-year guy at Ohio State, was a bullpen guy as a freshman, bumped up last year as a weekend starter, and was a name that when he went into the portal, a lot of guys wanted. The price tag with him, from what I've heard, was around $500,000. NIL stuff it's like urban legend. Some of it may be true, and a lot of it may not be. But point being, he's a guy that a lot of schools wanted. What's that?
It's like a game of telephone. NIL. Like, I heard this guy got much from here, there. Who knows what's true and what's not true?
Alfred, did you get any offers in the portal this weekend?
I did not. There were a lot of good NIL schools there too, which is a shame. But yes, unfortunately, it did not work in my favor. But
well,
oh well. I mean, maybe Arkansas will give me $500,000. We'll see.
Yeah, I think they're full up on pitchers right now. Maybe you can hit a little bit, but
or pitch
yeah.
run.
Speaking of hitting, Brett Iredale, guys, we had hyped him up out of the box. That kid is exactly what you hoped he would be. On base at .526, slugging .933, hit 2 home runs this weekend, drove in 9 runs. He and Kuhio Aloy, who they say can hit a golf ball 400 yards, providing some pop in the Arkansas order early.
Yeah, they have been. And with Iredale, it's been kind of cool to see. I feel like I'm, getting more of the feel that JUCO players are becoming way more common in the portal. And, I guess you don't know how it'll translate. Despite Iredale being an MVP in the JUCO league he was in, you still don't know, heading into the SEC, how that'll translate. It's translated. I mean, so far in 4 games against Washington State, I'd say he's probably been their best hitter. I mean, I think we're going to see Vahiva Aloy heat up a little more as well. I know he had 2 hits yesterday, I believe. Yeah, he did. So he may start to heat up a little more. That's going to be the key for Arkansas. We know that they could pitch the roof off the place, but it's just going to be about how they can hit and stuff. And they've responded well. I was really happy with them as a team as a whole after, that scare on opening day they had. They kind of shut down Washington State the next 3 games, and that's good for them heading into Arlington next weekend.
Opening day baseball is just tricky when it's played in 30-something degree weather with frozen fingers and that kind of stuff. So I don't. I think one of the problems with SEC baseball, guys, is this is a football centric league, and everybody like takes that mentality
baseball
to baseball. Like if you're better, you will just roll the other team. It doesn't work like that. If you're a baseball fan, you probably know that. By the way, Josie Whale says Beidelschies. That's her pronunciation she's got for us in the chat. That looks plausible.
Mm-hmm. I'll go with that for now.
Trust her.
That's good.
Well, that's right. But back to their pitching for a minute. They've now thrown 13 guys, and all of them I probably would have expected to see. I didn't know what Tate McGuire's role was going to be. He was a talented kid who redshirted a year ago. He's thrown an inning so far. Aiden Jimenez, who was a kid they got from Oregon State who missed all last year with injury, was not sure what his status was coming into the year. He's thrown in an inning for them, giving up a run. I'm trying to think if anybody has not thrown yet that I would have expected. They've got a bunch of freshmen: Steele Eves, Tag Andrews, Luke Williams, Lance Davis, a few other guys that haven't thrown yet. But all the returning guys so far have thrown. Cooper Dossett, I think, is done for the year with injury. But the interesting thing now, I think, Wood I thought would end up being their closer. It looks to me like it's probably going to be Christian Fouch, who's more of maybe a short burst guy. But if Wood throws in the rotation and he went 5 and gave up 2, I think you're going to see that mix and match. Like I couldn't tell you the last time I saw a college team that just went with the same 4 arms in the same order all year. Probably has never happened in my lifetime. But yeah, I mean, point is they've got a lot of pieces they can work with. I mean, I think what you're encouraged to see is Gage Wood go 5 innings because that answers some questions about durability. So, I mean, this pitching staff, guys, it might be the best in the country. They got Will McIntyre back. Maybe he's figured out something up with his fastball. He talked about that being problematic. I mean, is there a deeper pitching staff in the league or in the country than this one, guys?
After one weekend, I don't think so. I mean, and it's just up and down. It's just so many good players. I mean, Fouch is up for stopper of the year. He's probably one of the guys with the top odds to win it just as of right now in February. But another guy, too, I was impressed with Zach Root. I mean, that translated well from East Carolina. I think the American Athletic Conference is a little different from the SEC, but it didn't matter to him right now in one weekend. Yeah, just a little, right, Graham? But I don't think it mattered against Washington State, at least this one weekend. So we'll see. I think he's going to get a game in Arlington. They play Kansas State, TCU, and the last one was Michigan. Were the 3 teams they play. So I think that's going to be a little bit better to see how they are in a neutral field. And yeah, I think as of right now, pitching wise, though, I don't think there's a better staff in the country than these guys. I mean, they rolled, they really did roll this weekend, and they were excellent. So excited to watch them going forward.
I'd say top 3 are
go ahead.
For sure, definitely in the mix. And just like we've touched on, I think LSU will be in the conversation as well as Georgia. I feel like Georgia has more like bullpen depth.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think we're starting to think too much alike here. The next question I was going to ask you is if there's a staff that can challenge them for elite talent and depth combo, LSU is my bet. I think Arkansas is maybe, a little more accomplished at this level. Like if you go to JUCO and other places, maybe not. But I need to see that in the SEC a little bit first. And I think the other one that you mentioned is Georgia. Just sheer number of arms. Now, I'm not sure there's as good. In fact, I'm pretty sure they aren't as talented in terms of their top-end talent of Arkansas and LSU, but that's one to watch. We're going to have a Texas conversation. In fact, let's just jump right into that because I wanted to talk about Texas and Ole Miss today. And let's start with the Longhorns, Alfred, who were super impressive. Speaking of pitching, we did not see Ace Whitehead this weekend. I put out an APB on Twitter this morning for the Ace Whitehead situation. Forgot that I'd written in our preview last week that he's had thoracic outlet. And return date is going to be very questionable. They threw Max Grubbs into the bullpen, who is kind of more of a soft tosser, but threw some good innings for them threw a lot of good innings for them last year. So that's maybe I don't know if Will McIntyre would be an apical type comp, maybe something like that. That's a guy that you always love to have around. They've got some talented arms, and the lineup hit really well too. But enough of me, Alfred. You had eyes on them this weekend. What stood out to you?
Super impressed. I mean, I think, I talked to Schlossnagle after the first game. You guys saw that. I mean, they led Louisville 85-90% of that game. And then Louisville just decided we're going to win this thing in the ninth, and they did. And I mean, if Texas goes on and wins that game, like Schlossnagle said, that they, beat Louisville 2-0, they win 10-0 against an SEC team. And then they, for the most part, the scoreboard doesn't really do it justice. They kind of kicked, Oklahoma State in the tail as well. So if they win that Louisville game and don't blow it in the ninth, they're 3-0, and they just mowed through people. But that aside, I mean, they responded, really well to that Louisville loss. Batting wise, I think Will Gasparino was probably maybe the best player there in Arlington that weekend. Impressed with him. Max Ballou came alive in the next two games. He had some home runs. A guy who's not, Gasparino or Ballou is Adrian Rodriguez, is a guy who I was really impressed with too. He was hitting for power pretty well. They're pretty loaded, and the pitching was a worry. You didn't really have a healthy quotes Max Grubbs heading in. He did pitch, which was good to see for them. Ace Whitehead obviously is a question, but Jared Spencer was great the first game. Luke Harrison was really, really good. I talked to him after the game, and he said, I don't even feel like I was at my best. I was just, kind of going through the motions, and everything was working. I think Luke Harrison borderline had the best start out of anyone in Arlington. There might be someone else up there, but he's certainly one of the better starts we saw there against Ole Miss. Yeah, and that's also the biggest takeaway too is I know it doesn't count for SEC play, but the game against Ole Miss, you got to feel pretty good, if you're the Texas Longhorns and your first SEC game is a run rule, you know what I mean, in your favor. So that tends to work out pretty well for you. But yeah, they win the championship of that tournament. I'm sure that they probably don't care, but it's a good thing to see. And I think this team, as time goes on, if they continue to play like this, we can start talking about them being like, hey, they're a team that can get to Omaha in year one with Jim Schlossnagle there if everything comes together and they get healthier. So super impressed with them this weekend. They responded well to a loss, and it was great to see.
Yeah, I think Luke Harrison was an interesting insertion into the rotation, was bad last year, class of 21 kid, not really a highly regarded kid out of high school. But, maybe health was an issue there a year ago. I mean, for him, he was SEC Pitcher of the Week, guys. I mean, I don't think we ever talked about Luke Harrison once in the preseason. I didn't give it two thoughts. No. By the way, I'm not sure what their situation is behind him. Cade Bing is their number 3. He's a JUCO kid from McLennan, which pumps out a lot of players. I think he went a third or 2/3 of an inning. So I don't know if they're waiting. The Grubbs threw in relief. Grayson Saunier threw in relief. Graham, you've seen him a lot. Very talented kid, top 150 kid out of high school. And in the bullpen, which I thought would be the best part of their team, was kind of disappointing. But, I don't think they threw Connor McCreary this weekend either. He's a guy that Schlossnagle talked about a lot. Aiden Moffitt from LSU threw a little bit. Dylan Volantis and Drew Reber, two their highly regarded freshmen, threw a little bit, but not a ton. I think where I question Texas is, are their top end arms up to par with maybe the top half of the league? And I'm not sure they are. Although again, they just had the SEC Pitcher of the Week, and Jared Spencer threw well. So we're looking at a pretty high bar here. But maybe a little bit of depth, and that's a place where, look, you get tested. You got a lot of pitchers that put up eye-popping pitching numbers, but they're not against teams that are going to really test them for the most part. So I'll be interested. I'm not going to say I'm out on their pitching. That's too much. I still have questions about their pitching. according, comparing to the top end of their lineup, I think that's another discussion. I'm glad you brought up Rodriguez. He's a guy that Schlossnagle loved. If you heard him talk, he got 3 starts at third base. I think the big one's Gasparino there. I mean, he was a number 44 kid out of high school 2 years ago by perfect game. And Graham, you know this really well. We saw it with Charlie Condon, who didn't play as a freshman and had All-American season next year as a sophomore. Wyatt Langford, 4 plate appearances as a freshman. Was what, a top 5 guy in the draft the next year. You see guys that jump up from sophomore seasons, and Will Gasparino a year ago was okay for a freshman, but struck out a lot. And if you listen to Schlossnagle talk in the offseason, he talked a lot about how well this kid was hitting, to the point where, like, he cut himself off in mid-sentence in one interview I heard. He said, I kind of hate to say it to jinx him, but he was kind of talking about him in reverential tones. And then Gasparino went out and just crushed it this last week. And so, I'm not going to say they've got holes in the lineup. I think that's strong. There's some places maybe they're not as strong as an A&M or an LSU. But if you've got Max Ballou, who's going to be a first-rounder this year, and you throw in a Gasparino taking the kind of jump up that people thought he would take coming into the year, and you got some other good bats around him, that's a pretty good lineup potentially, Graham.
Well, listen to what those 3 did, Ballou, Rodriguez, and Gasparino. Those 3 combined, just extra base hits alone, they had 14 total. 14 extra base hits. And just think about the level of competition. I mean, that's a very good Louisville team out of the ACC, Ole Miss, in Arlington. So really, really good start for Texas. But, yeah, those 3, especially if Gasparino can make that jump this season, I mean, Texas, their heart of their lineup could be one of the best in the SEC. I do agree with you, Chris. Like, to me, the question for Texas is their pitching. What does that look like? How does that translate? And how do they use somebody like Grayson Saunier? Grayson Saunier, when he was at Ole Miss, he was supposed to be a weekend starter, just never really panned out. And he just pitches once in relief for the Longhorns this weekend. So just how do they use him? What does that look like? I'll be very curious to see how that shakes out for Texas.
We'll also say, as far as the pitching goes, as time goes on, I think you don't want a better pitching coach or you don't want anyone else coaching your pitching other than Max Wiener. I mean, that's a guy you'd kind of want to kind of get it up to par with everyone else. So they're in a pretty good spot. I mean, we'll see how they look going forward.
Yeah. Want to ask you their outfield. I'm trying to figure out what their plan is there. I feel like they've got 4 guys, maybe. Winfield, I think, started and left. I want to say maybe didn't start one of the games. He's a transfer from ULM. Ballou played right. I think also played DH. Are they going Gasparino exclusively in center?
They could. I mean, they also have Tommy Farmer.
Farmer was the other guy. Yeah.
They could throw him in somewhere. It's a combo of those 4 you said.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, he's Farmer was a guy that didn't do much a year ago that I don't think got a lot of preseason buzz, but that's another one. You listen to him talk, you could tell Schlossnagle loved him, so I wasn't shocked to see him in the lineup. Yeah, I think it's a good bunch. I think they're splitting time at catcher between Cole Chamberlain, the freshman, and Ryan Galvin. That's another thing to watch. Maybe the loser plays DH some days. Ryan Borba got regulated to the bench a little bit too. Wasn't necessarily expecting that. Or excuse me, Casey Borba. Anyway, any more thoughts on the Longhorns? Because I want to talk Ole Miss. And our buddy Sven is here, a Mississippi State fan. So welcome to the chat. We might get into the state on the way out if we got. I mean, I've got a live stream for football at 11, so we'll be a little abbreviated today potentially. But yeah, any other thoughts on Texas before we talk Ole Miss?
Let's do Ole Miss because Sven's here. It's his favorite team in the world.
That's right. He's gonna love us. Sven's gonna leave the chat as soon as we start this probably. But in all seriousness, what were your thoughts on the Rebels, who I thought had a really nice weekend? That the one bad game notwithstanding, you come out of that event with 2 wins, and you're pretty happy no matter how it happens.
Yeah, same thing as Texas kind of, when it comes to responding to the loss. I mean, you get that was one of, if not the worst loss this weekend, although Arizona had a pretty bad weekend there. But I mean, that was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. Mike Bianco admitted it was really bad. I walked past those guys that just like fuming. You could feel them fuming, walking past them after that game. I mean, it was not pretty. And how do they respond, guys? They beat Clemson, who is, a bona fide top 10 team, when they're playing at their best. So they beat them bad. They run ruled them. They pounced on that starter. I think it was Legurnick was the starter for Clemson that day. They pounced on top of him early. Luke Hill was crazy this weekend. I loved watching him. Beyond Gasparino, I'd probably say Luke Hill might have been the other best guy, in Arlington this weekend. Utermark had a home run that game. There was a ton of guys. The pitching was pretty solid. I mean, I feel bad. I told you this for the Texas game. I feel bad for Riley Maddox because it was kind of like he was doing good through 3 innings, and then a rally started going, and then the whole game just spiraled. So Maddox he did well up until the point where it spiraled. So that is something to watch with him. And then I would say Nichols even was pretty decent against Clemson. He did enough to keep Ole Miss right there. It helps when you have the kind of inning Ole Miss had to go way ahead, but Nichols did really good as well. If you're Ole Miss, I could not have guessed Ole Miss would have started 2-1 after this weekend with who they played, and they did. So more power to them. It seemed like that Clemson game kind of put the cherry on top of everything. The bat was coming off the ball. I mean, even Luke Hill, it was like that opposite field home run. That's a pretty good hit. An opposite field home run, in Globe Life Field for a college guy. So I was impressed with him a lot. Bianca called him the best hitter. So that I 100% believe it. Clemson is what they are, borderline top 50. What I saw, Ole Miss, absolutely horrific. You're right.
I was going to tell you, somebody's not buying it here in the chat. I think borderline top 50 might be a little harsh.
It's a little harsh.
Club.
That's a team that's like this from Omaha. I mean,
yeah, they lost some guys, but I think I kind of believe in Bakic's ability to do some stuff there. Also, reminder, they will end their season in baseball like they did a year ago. So we'll watch out for that. Watch the brackets closely when we get to Hoover. Just having a little fun here. That's what we do. Seriously, Graham, thoughts on Ole Miss? The Luke Hill story was a big angle. Obviously, Hunter Elliott was a huge storyline. That changes the complexion of their season if he's healthy potentially. I'm not sure about their starting pitching beyond that, but that you liked really what you saw out of Hill and Elliott for sure. And I mean, look, all jokes aside, winning 2 out of 3 against that field is pretty good. That is a super encouraging start.
Yeah, and I mean, I won't lie. Like, it was weird when you see the coaches preseason poll and you see Ole Miss at 15, just above Missouri. Like, that hasn't happened under, Mike Bianco, where you just see the team that towards the bottom. So I don't know. It was just kind of Ole Miss fans were just, what is this team going to look like? And just the roller coaster of the first 2 games alone. Like, you get a big win to start the tournament, and then Texas, you're just not very competitive at all. Then you bounce back and you beat, a very good Clemson team. So Mike Bianco, after the win against Clemson, I mean, that was what he touched on the most, just this team has fight to it. I mean, he's been very open and honest. The last 2 years have not gone well, and he hasn't really touched on a lot of failure. And I mean, he's been very open and honest, really going back towards the offseason. So you could tell he was pleased just with the bounce back and the fight that this team has. So they play today against Arkansas State. The weather's so bad, though, that they've already have changed the first pitch time today. Like, I don't know what it's going to be in Nashville, Chris, but like in the Memphis to Mid-South area, like, snow is definitely in the forecast.
Well, I'll tell you what it's like in Nashville. Based on walking the dog this morning, miserable. I had to redirect Oreo from his walk and get him back inside. It is awful. It is awful weather for anything, and particularly baseball. By the way, get in your questions. We've got about maybe 10, 12 minutes left before I've got to do a football stream at 11. And so need to give myself time just to stop this one and start that one. But here's another thing. We circle that outfield. Ryan Moorman, Mitchell Sanford, Isaac Humphrey, Louisville, thought those guys had a good week. And Owen Pano, their starting shortstop, who was a big-time recruit from New York, a guy that most people have trouble getting to campus in the range that he was as a recruit. Alfred, want to get your thoughts on those guys since you saw them this weekend.
Yeah, I apologize to Ryan Moorman. That I should have mentioned him besides Luke Hill. He was really good too. I mean, he had a home run this weekend. His batting average after this weekend sits at 364. So that's right behind Luke Hill for their second best hitter. Those guys, I mean, that was the thing we saw when we were doing our charts for each team was, that outfield is transfers. How is that going to work out for these guys? It's worked out pretty well. I mean, Isaac Humphrey too, had a home run. He's batting 300 right now through 3 games. And it's been okay. I mean, I think we have to see a little bit more from Mitchell Sanford. His bat wasn't necessarily, anything crazy, but if all those guys can hold through, that's a transfer win for Mike Bianco and Ole Miss, because the outfield looked kind of good this weekend. I mean, if you get 2 out of those 3 guys hitting well like you did, you can't really complain about it. So, and I think that's what it's going to be. I don't think there's any question about, changes like we talked about with Texas to that outfield. I think it's going to be Moorman, Humphrey, and then Sanford pretty much for the foreseeable future. So really impressed with it. Again, you get 2 out of 3 guys batting like that, you're pretty happy.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to touch on this. So this game, the last game of the tournament, the Clemson game, I mean, Alfred, you saw it. Clemson at the time, it was the hidden ball trick to get out of.
Yeah.
So it was reported yesterday, by the way, that the umpires went to Mike Bianco and Ole Miss after the fact and said, hey, we messed up. We got that wrong. So I'll be curious to see if like John Boy has a breakdown of it, later.
Yeah.
Because like if you go back and watch it, it's all over social media right now. 2 of the umpires very clearly signal like time. And then, Clemson. Yeah, I think Clemson just needs to play at third for the final out with a hidden ball trick. So I just thought that was, hey, it's opening weekend for everybody, umpires included. So they admitted that they got that one wrong.
It was so weird. That's what I thought too. I was like, they definitely called time or something, right? I mean, they can't. Yeah. They didn't just let that go.
Graham, I want to get a couple of your thoughts on Ole Miss pitching beyond LA. I know Connor Spencer had a good weekend. We'll touch on Vandy Air Force and hit a question or comment or two on our way out. But I'm having I know they went Maddox and then Mason Nichols. I don't know if they go Gunnar Dennis in the midweek today. I'm just curious what the pitching architecture looks like beyond Elliott and Maddox and how much confidence we've got that they're better there this year.
Yeah, well, at least to start the season, it's those 3 guys. And again, the theme for Ole Miss this season is we want guys that have been through, a lot. So all of those guys are seniors that have been pitching a lot over the years. One of the new additions to the team is McCausland, the St. Joseph transfer. Like he was really, really good in his Ole Miss debut and his outing in relief. And again, he was the number 1 target in the portal. From the new pitching coach, Joel Mangrum. He really liked what he saw. He thought his game would translate to the SEC. So it kind of looks like, he'll be a big part moving forward. Now, is that eventually in the weekend rotation or is that in the bullpen? We'll wait and see. But again, the theme for Ole Miss this season, on the mound, in the outfield, they wanted to get as much experience and like junior and seniors out there as possible.
Yeah. Couple of comments we'll get to, then we'll close maybe with some brief thoughts on Vandy Air Force if there's any takeaways from that, which there might be a couple. Sven asked what we thought of LSU. Yeah, I agree. I thought they looked. I mean, I say that they looked. I didn't get to see much of it. I know their team. I know the abilities of what they had. I looked at the box scores; they were pretty amazing. in terms of the strikeouts to walks and all that. I went into the weekend feeling like that pitching staff was probably better than being talked about, and I didn't see anything to change my mind. Did you guys?
No. I mean, Sven mentioned Will Schmidt too. I think Will Schmidt touched like 97, like right out the gate. Yeah. I mean, it was great. It was unbelievable. I saw something about that. Batting wise, Chris Stanfield looked pretty good in his LSU debut weekend. Ashton Larson was someone we talked about as a returner to LSU, someone who's going to take a big step. I know a lot of LSU people I talked to last year were really excited for him. Daniel Dickinson so far is pretty much as advertised, right, from what we saw this weekend. Jared Jones, I think, started a little quiet, but his home run kind of woke him up a little bit. They're up there with Tennessee and A&M really as some of the more impressive teams I saw this weekend. And what do you know, that they're toward the top of our power rankings. So really, I was quite impressed with LSU and what they did. And yeah, as far as Schmidt goes, I mean, holy smokes, I don't. there was someone next to me in Arlington, like, why is he not pitching in the minors right now? I mean, this is insane stuff, and it just goes to show how this game is changing.
3 letters, NIL.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, also the thing Jay Johnson told us, he said he grew up like a quarter of a mile from the ballpark, and he dreamed of playing for LSU. So that helped just a little bit too. I think he said he grew up wearing LSU pajamas, maybe figuratively or literally, but you get the point. One other thing that stood out to me, Alfred, you mentioned Stanfield. To be honest, I wasn't sure that Chris Stanfield was going to fit in that outfield. They got Curiel. They've got Jake Brown, who's talented. They got, they got they got Josh Pearson. They've got Nick Paul. They got a lot of guys that have been there and been in that program. And when I saw Stanfield defensively last year, I just wasn't a big fan of it. So maybe that's improved a little bit. I mean, he's a highly regarded pro guy. Like he's going to get drafted by somebody.
Yeah.
After this year, whether his season's good or not. So that's one thing to kind of keep an eye on. That outfield mix, they got a lot of talented guys, maybe not a lot of proven guys, and I want to see where that goes. Our opinion, who is better, A&M or LSU? I mean, look, we went A&M in the preseason power rankings because you sort of have to. They were one game away from a national title. They got, other than Braden Montgomery, almost all their key guys back. But I'm telling you, when you look at it on paper, the pitching depth and experience that LSU's got, I think is better than A&M's. Now, A&M's got Ryan Prager, and nobody's got a Ryan Prager. But I'm going to tell you, I think that we could look up in the season if that outfield develops and say the LSU is the best club in this league. I don't think that's – it might feel like a stretch right now based on track record, but I think based on what they've got, I'm not sure it is. You guys tell me.
I'm not going to pick over A&M right now for the time being. I just don't. I don't feel, at all confident in doing that. I know these two are just powerhouses and everything, but I mean, you saw, what Jace Laviolette did this weekend, and how do you pick against that guy? I don't know how you pick against A&M right now. Still, maybe that'll change, and I think obviously SEC play once we get there will shake things up. But one weekend is one weekend, so for the time being, until one team gets upset in a loss or something crazy happens, I don't know. I don't know if I pick against A&M still.
Yeah.
To me, Texas had the best opening weekend just when you look at what they did, against their level of competition. So really good start to the weekend for Texas. But, we got A&M 1 and LSU 2 in our power rankings for a reason. Just LSU or A&M, they're just so talented. They got a lot to work with, and LSU is absolutely loaded as well. So for the moment, again, we got a long way to go, but A&M loaded, LSU right there with them, and yeah, that could certainly flip flop all season long. But all three of those teams are going to be in the mix, by the way. So I expect to see them towards the top. in the standings.
I feel this is a lot like SEC basketball right now, where you got maybe 5 of the top 6 teams in the country are SEC teams. And I think that's exactly what you're going to have in baseball. It's going to be A&M's going to be in there. LSU's going to be in there. I think Tennessee's going to be in there. But to be honest, we hadn't seen a lot of these guys in the all uniform, including a lot of JUCO arms and a lot of their pitching. So I'm kind of waiting to see that. I trust it, but we kind of need to verify it. Arkansas, I think Arkansas is a super high floor team. They're kind of the Tennessee basketball of baseball, where we're not real sure about the offense. Sometimes it looks good, but the defense and the pitching are absolutely there. I mean, Florida could be in that top 5 or 6 mix. Still want to see a little bit more out of those starters and see what their bullpen is. We haven't really seen that. And Georgia, for depth reasons we talked about, Texas could jump up in there. I'm not sure I trust the pitching depth like I trust some of the other teams, but that's kind of my watch list right now. For that elite group. Anything in the comments or the questions we need to get to?
Arkansas didn't impress Sven. Well, Sven, sorry. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. They impressed me. They outscored them 31-6 the last 3 games, and then 2 run rules. I don't know what more you want.
Your talent level at Washington State is going to be a notch higher than a Manhattan or a Hofstra, just a little bit. So let's maybe check our powers of observation based on who teams played. Which, to be honest, go ahead.
How do we feel about 4-game series, by the way? Like, I know when John Cohen was at State, like that was a thing for John Cohen. So much so that Auburn's doing it this weekend. Auburn, they start a 4-game series on Thursday.
Well, I'll close here, and then I got one comment on the way out because I've got to get to football. I feel like series should be banished until March. The longer we go, the less a proponent I am of February baseball. Let's get these games in March when everybody's not frozen. Let's not have our opening weekend going up against basketball tournaments. Let's get the sport the recognition it deserves. Final thing, only other team to play yesterday, Vanderbilt beat Air Force 3-1. J.D. Rogers had a home run for Vanderbilt, and I think that the headliner there, Austin Nye for Vanderbilt, a kid who had not pitched since May of 2023, had arm issues, came back, started, gave them 3 scoreless. So Vanderbilt in another one of these frozen games we're getting across the Southeast. Now 3-1. They'll play today. When we're back tomorrow, we'll talk about the Tuesday games. Hopefully we'll get some of those in before the snow hits us. And we'll take your questions and comments. Some stuff on Auburn here. Yeah, it didn't look great this weekend, but again, the Cade Ballou situation was just so unusual. Tough weekend to play baseball following one of those things. Anyway, got to run to get to a football live stream, which you can catch right here in just a few seconds. It's me and Chase Robinson. For Graham Doty, Alfred Ezman, thanks for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. We're going to be doing this around this 10 o'clock time slot, maybe 10:15. So tune in every day. We're going to be talking baseball at least Monday through Thursday and some on the weekends too. We'll figure it out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. We'll see you again soon with more baseball, football, and basketball content here at Southeastern 16.